Okay. Thanks, Carlotta, for your inspiring talk, passionate talk. And sorry, we have just to go quickly to the other presentation because we have a lot of people here, a lot of experience to listen to, and we don't have much time. So please keep in mind your questions, and at the end we can ask to the speakers. And I'm following, sorry, I have noticed that the order published online is different from the order we have this in the program in paper, but I will follow the order online. So please, Natalia, you are the next one. You are presenting a very interesting, I'm sure, will be also for our audience, an empirical research conducted as a part of your master thesis in Denmark. You have analyzed 3 important museums in Denmark, and your starting point is our starting point. Are the virtual followers of social media the same people who visit museums in physical spaces? So you have started from this question, and you have analyzed Twitter profiles,
Facebook?
Facebook profiles for 3 important museums. So tell us your experience, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Natalia Dudareva, and as you heard, I'm a graduate student at Copenhagen Business School. So I would like to speak with you about my research about museums in social media. I started my research with a question. So what is the relevance of social media for museums? Right now, museums are trying to use a lot of social media, opening up the profiles. But what we'd like to know is how actually relevant it is for museum visitors. Does it really reach those who would like to visit museums? So with this question in mind, I selected to study Facebook as the main platform. And I would like to start with the 2 main findings, 2 main points that I would like to introduce during my presentation. First of all, what I found out is that museum audiences on Facebook are not homogeneous. And by that I mean that they have different motivations to follow these pages. And okay. They have... Do you hear me? Yeah, is it working? Okay, good. They have different behavior as well. The second point that I would like to introduce is that museum profiles on social media are not just online representations of museums. These are actually also cultural experiences on their own. My presentation consists of 3 parts. First of all, I would like to introduce you to the study that I made so that you can better understand the analytical interpretation and approach it critically. Secondly, I would like to speak with you about the museum audiences on Facebook and what I found out about them. And thirdly, I would like to speak about how actually this social media audiences are linked with the real audiences, the people who go through the doors of the museums. So first of all, my study. And my study was conducted in collaboration with 3 museums, so I would like to say that I'm really grateful for them to join me in this study. The National Gallery of Denmark, the National Museum of Denmark, and the David Collection distributed my survey on their Facebook pages, which allowed me to study the people who are following their pages. And to shortly introduce the museums, the National Gallery of Denmark is the largest art museum in Denmark, and it presents a wide collection of Danish art, but also international art, and organizes a lot of interesting projects and events. at the museum. The National Museum of Denmark is the largest museum of cultural history in Denmark, which presents a history of the Danes from the ancient times to modern times. And the David collection is a collection based on a private collection. Yes, and it presents an internationally acknowledged collection of Arabic art and also a collection of Danish art and other European art. The online survey that I have distributed was shared in summer 2013 by these 3 museums on their Facebook pages. And this survey is largely Danish related because the Facebook pages are maintained in Danish, so it was also distributed in Danish, and most of respondents come from Denmark. And I analyzed the results statistically, so all the ideas that I present to you is the result of statistical analysis. So first of all, to have a better understanding, who are these people who answered this survey? So they follow the pages of these 3 museums on Facebook. They see these updates and they react to them. For example, the museums asked to answer a survey and they reacted. And as many other surveys and research about cultural audiences demonstrate, the majority are female. And I would also like to point out to the fact that although young people or teenagers are very active in social media, they were not as active, and you can see the percentage is much lower concerning this kind of audience. So these are the Facebook audiences, and I should really point out to the fact that they do use Facebook every day. Almost everyone who answered are very active on Facebook. But what we would like to know is what part museums play in this Facebook use. What do they do on Facebook every day? And of course, the primary interest they have is private communication, so it's following their friends. But I would also like to point out that almost half of the people who follow these pages, they are actually using Facebook to find art exhibitions, to find cultural activities. So this is an active platform. It's not just receiving news, but it's also about being active. So now you have an idea about who answered the research. So I would like to introduce you what I found out about museum audiences on Facebook. And as I mentioned before, one of the points is that these audiences are different. And I would like to say that the motivations that are different among them, the ones that I studied, are first of all very intangible. This is something that is not possible to count directly, and it's very hard to measure, but that's why it's so interesting for museum professionals to know. First of all, it's about feeling connected with the museum and feeling related to the message or the idea that stands behind the museum. This is one of the motivations. And the second motivation is the desire, the active desire to interact and to contribute and to co-create together with the museum, to develop something together related to the museum experience. And based on these 2 motivations, I could actually divide the groups. So as Stefania mentioned before, it's very interesting to know. So actually, people who follow museums on Facebook, are they actually visiting the museums, and why are they doing that? So with these 2 motivations in mind, you can see they are on the graph. I arranged them from low to high, so it's easier to feel less connected personally versus very connected and less desire to participate. So you can see each bubble represents the type, the group among the respondents, and the size of the bubble represents the size of the relative size of this group. And you can see that the largest one is called enthusiast, and I called them enthusiast because they're the most engaged personally. They do feel a personal connection, and they feel that when they connect with the museum on Facebook, they actually connect to something greater than just a museum. There is something that stands behind this interaction, which is very interesting to know, and they would really like to contribute and to interact. And this group is very active in visiting museums as well. So this is the most active visitors of museums who are actually following them as well, and you can really see the connection between them. And then there are 2 interesting groups with where one motivation is high and the other one is low. For example, the connected, the second largest group, they also feel this intangible connectedness with the museum, with what it stands for, but at the same time they do not really feel confident, or they don't feel that it's the best way to do is to interact with the museum. And they are also actively visiting. But what is interesting about the Connected for museum professionals is that this is a very engaged audience and very interested audience that visits museums, but you don't see that as the social media manager because they do not interact with you on Facebook. So they are very interested, but they are not interacting. So they are there behind the following number, and they like you and visit, but you don't really feel it so much. And then there is contributor who really wants to develop something together, and at the same time they're not very active in visiting museums, and they do not feel this connection, which is very interesting because then there is a group of people who still follow museums on Facebook, and they would like to contribute, but they are not so often going through your doors. So there are also groups of people that you can reach through Facebook who are not always coming to the museum. And that's why it's also interesting to look at interested in informational types, where interested is moderately involved with the museum, but it's a very active visitor as well. They are probably not liking your posts or commenting anything at all, but they use Facebook pages actively to gain information, and they visit museums often. And then there is an informational type, which is not really visiting museums so much, and they are not very involved, but they are following the pages, so this is a latent audience in a way, and they are also in the following numbers. So as you can see, behind this number of followers on the Facebook page, it's actually a very wide variety of people, not only demographic-wise, but there are very different motivations behind, and not all of them are actually visiting the museums. So this is partly a very different kind of environment, and that's why I would like to speak about linking these two worlds, the real world and the social media world. And as I mentioned before, there is some kind of cultural experience on its own which is created in social media. And then we're coming to some kind of contradiction. So, okay, there are people who are following museums on Facebook and visiting them. And then there are people who, for example, would follow museums on Facebook but not really come. So there is a kind of, it's a question as well to study it more and to find out, so what about those people who, for example, would like to contribute and they follow museums, but they still don't show up? There is a lot of potential as well to reach out to them, because if they follow, they are still interested in a way. But also I can say that there is definitely a connection, because when I was studying the data, I could also find out that people who follow these 3 museums, the followers of each museum were also the most active visitors of these museums. So it's true that most of people who would follow a museum, at least locally, they would be actually visiting. So this is still a large number. And this comes to an analytical conclusion about how can it be applied to practice. And what I can say is that it's a lot about balancing the representation of museum online, so the informational part where you can learn about the museum through Facebook, but also remembering that there are actually people are using it not only just to get information, they're feeling connected with the idea of the museum. And to conclude, I would like to say that cultural experience in social media, this is something that has to be, of course, studied much more, but what my research has shown is that with the functionality of social media, it's possible to go much further beyond just being informational about the museum, but actually involving people more, and for example, in strengthening the connection with people who already come to the museums outside the experience, extending the experience that they receive at the museum, but also strengthening the connection with people who might have it at the back of their mind and follow the museum, but probably not really show up at the door. So there is a lot of functionality that can be used much further than just informing people about the museum. Thank you for your attention.